welcome to my channel. Today we are going further into the real deal, which I believe is what you've been waiting for. And this particular video is going to be divided into two parts in order to be able to touch each area as extensive as I can. So without wasting much time, because time is quite limited when you try and load these things onto to YouTube, I'm going to go straight and jump deep dive into what we're going to do today, or what this particular part one of this video is about. We are talking about the initiating process group and the processes within that group. As you know, there are 4 or 5, I think 5 process groups within the project management area itself: the initiating, the planning, the executing, the monitor and control, and the closed project groups. And what will then happen is, underneath those, you consider many things you need to do or many things you need to worry about, and which are lined up in the knowledge area. So we're going to focus on the 2 processes that are within the initiating process group, which is the project integration management and the stakeholder management. The stakeholder management will be covered in part 2 of this project. Now, as a bit of a background, we're about to start a project, and a project doesn't just land from the sky and just gets done. What you do have is the business would sit down and go through some kind of pre-selection process in order to actually, in the first place, mandate the project to start in the first place. So in every project initiation, there's what you have as a pre-project and the project. And the pre-project is usually outside the control of the project manager. But again, that itself could be a project whereby a project manager is hired to look into things and help to do selection and do a lot of analysis and all that stuff, or a business analyst will come in to do that. But generally speaking, in the context of this exam, let's look at the pre-project as outside the authority or the power of the project manager. But it's been included just so the project manager knows or has knowledge of what happens before he actually gets a project to actually deliver. So we're going to touch on that pretty much most of this particular video, simply because it has a very big relevance to the project charter itself. Now, I'm just going to quickly go on to defining what a project charter is, and then we'll roll back to the pre-project, because I think it's very important for the basis of what I'm about to say. Now, when I was looking at this and I started studying, I'm thinking, why have they used the word charter? Why not project initiation document, or project mandate, or project authority document, or something? Why have they used the word charter? Because the word charter is only kind of peculiar with the PMI standards. And I went into Google the meaning of charter, and it says a written grant by the sovereign or legislative power of a country, by which a body such as a borough, a company, or university is created, or its rights and privileges defined. For example, the town received a charter from the emperor. Synonyms of a charter is authority, authorization, sanction, covenant, dispensation, consent, permission, sufferance, prerogative, privilege, right, historical droit, I can't pronounce that word. The company is on, for example, they put a sentence here: the company is operating under a royal charter. Further on, other synonyms are a permit, a license, a warrant, a warranty, a deed, a bond, a document, an indenture, a concession, a franchise, a privilege. So it goes on. Now I understand why the PMI have decided to use the word project charter. So project charter in effect gives the project manager the authority to apply resources to do the project. Without a project charter, there is no project. Okay? Bottom line, without a project charter, there is no project. It's pretty much about the only absolute statement that you will have in the PMI standards, that without a project charter, you might as well not have a project. So in effect, a project charter is some kind of agreement that has been made to meet certain objectives and to be able to work to give the project manager an authority and a guideline to actually work. Now, Wikipedia goes on to talk about the project charter. It goes on to say, trying to find it, bear with me. Well, I know what it is. Wikipedia is pretty much saying that the one thing about a project charter is whoever is actually issuing that charter has the sovereign authority over that charter. In the case of this, it means the project sponsor who is issuing that charter, who is authorizing that charter, has sovereign authority over the whole project itself. And that means the project manager will assume an inferior or a less status, as to say, you know what, if you don't want this anymore, I'm just going to comply. I'm not going to argue with you or fight with you. I am bound to meet what you have said as far as the charter is concerned. So that's a very, very blanket and basic understanding of the charter, and hopefully when we go on to this, you will have that in your mind to understand why the charter is what it is. Now, back to pre-project initiation itself. Now, a project charter is started, it's just a document, but before a project is actually initiated, there's certain things that need to go into place, that need to happen, right? And when you build the project charter, you're going to need certain things. I've gone to write a few questions here to say, okay, we want to develop a project charter. What is a charter? We've answered that. When is a charter developed? It started at the pre-project side of the project. What are the contents that could help develop a charter? How do we get information required to get a charter done? And what is contained in a charter? And in that, what we're talking about here, for example, is the inputs. Okay? The inputs to a project charter are, for example, you got the business case, you got the statement of works, you got enterprise environmental factors, and you got organizational process assets, OPAs. I put that organizational process assets, OPAs. Yeah? Now, let's talk about the business case. The business case is pretty much, why do we need to get this project done? Why do we need to mandate this project? Why do we need a project manager to come and do this project and deliver this? What's the reason? What does it benefit the business? Okay, to do that, what happens is there are two ways. You can either have a meeting, peer groups, senior heads of departments, executive, consultants come in and have a look at the business and make a decision on the project itself, or if there's a list of projects, priorities of the project. They could, brainstorm, list the projects and put them on a matrix and say, in terms of the degree of importance, which one should we do first. You could also have a peer review of the projects, which will say, okay, well, let's look at each project based on merits and basically choose the one that is most important, or the ones we want to go for. And there's some of them where they call them the motherboard. That's what they call them. I'm using the British book here to basically revise myself and remind myself of what to say. The motherboard, and basically a panel of people who try to shoot down a new project. They want to give every reason why that project should not happen. Yeah, and it's a good way to be able to justify more reason why the project should happen if they're unable to shoot it down. You have a scoring model and you have an economic model. Now, the economic model is what I have here. The economic model is when they actually sit down and do a much more quantitative analysis of the project. And this could be based on a combination of many factors. They could combine it on the benefits analysis. They call it the benefits cost ratio. by the time we spend this much money, what are we actually going to benefit from this? And that's what's the revenue of, not the profit, the revenue. What kind of money is going to come in regularly if we spend this type of money on this project? Obviously you want to get more benefits. If you have benefit of above one, it means you're benefiting and getting revenue more than you're actually spending on the project itself. You have what you call the net present value. You also have what you call the internal rates of return, or the present value, or the payback period. And these are questions that will just pop out in the exam to help you to figure out whether you fully understand why you even have the project in front of you in the first place. Okay, so we're going to touch on each of these very quickly. The present value has a formula, which is, I'll borrow this little space here, right? We'll talk about the present value, PV, yeah, which has a formula of future value, right, over 1 plus, I think it's the rate over the period of time, N, which eventually is pretty much saying, if I give you, what would I give to you today to get that in the future? Okay, present value is, for example, look at a pension. Those of you who do pension, you say, the value today of my pension is £2,000, but in 10 years time, that £2,000, based on the rate of inflation and all that stuff, is actually worth £10,000. That's what pretty much what that is saying, that if I spend this amount of money on this project, I'm going to actually get this value out of this project. But in future, this is what is going to be worth. So should I do this project or not? Okay? In other words, the question will be, what would you expect if I said a certain amount is £300 today? What do you think the future value will be? Is it going to be higher or lower? That's what it is. And what you have in here is you have present value, future value. You're going to be given a value, and you can actually work out mathematically what each one should be. So, for example, I've been given a future value of 400k, okay, at a percentage of 20% over 3 years. What that formula will be is 1 plus 0.2, 20% in itself, over a period of, say, 5 years. And that's how you're going to work that. And how will I get the present value? It means that, technically speaking, the present value is always going to be less, because you're going to be dividing this by that. It's always going to be less. The present value would always be less than the future value, because you're expecting, I mean, if it goes the other way around, it means that, come on, there's going to be a problem. It's like basically your mortgage going into negative equity. You don't want negative equity in anything you invest in. You want basically positive equity. That's what that is all about. So if you look at the project and say, hang on, if we invest £400,000 today, it means in 10 years time, that £400,000 could be worth 4 million. So yeah, it's a good thing. And that's how governments work. They look at things, and that's how organizational work. They look at investments today and see what future value, not only monetary value, but in other benefits to the economy or to the people. You have the internal rate of return, again, which is pretty much like an interest rate, to say, if we basically invest this amount today, right, what are we going to get in return in the future? The higher it is, the better. If you're going to consider multiple projects and you say, if we invest £40,000 on this project and we're only going to get £10,000, and then if you invest £100,000 on this project, we're going to get £300,000. Anything that's got a higher IRR automatically qualifies for the project you're going to prioritize. That's as simple as that. So in any of these values, to be honest, any project, in any exam question that you have, the higher the better. If it's the payback period, okay, payback period might be a bit of a difference here, because, for example, I go how much money, how quickly do you get your investment value back? That's where you have an exception. Actually, take that back. An exception to the rule of the higher the better. So, payback period is I invest £200,000 to deliver a project. How quickly do I get that money back plus profit? So the less the payback period, the more likely you're going to want to choose that project, irrespective of how much money it's cost you to put the project in place. For example, £200 is invested on a project. It's going to take me 12 months to get my money back. But I go on to invest £2 million on a project, but it's going to take me 3 months to get my money back. Again, we're back to the higher the better, but £300 million, yes, but we're going to take me 3 months to get my money back. Obviously, the financial, the impacts, the initial capital to raise £3 million could be a defining factor, but hey, I'm going to get it back in 3 months. It means I'm going to be looking at running into good profits very quickly than spending less £200,000, but it's taking me 12 months to actually get that money back. So you need to think very carefully. To be honest, they're no-brainers. You just need to read the question carefully and understand exactly what they're trying to say and look at it in real life times. What do I get back today or in the future for what I put in today? Simple as that. What do I get back in the future for what do I get in today? Or how quickly do I get back what I've put in the future to what I put in today? And that way, you should be able to quickly answer and correctly answer any questions regarding how project selection is made. Benefits, cost ratio, net present values. Net present values when you take out everything, and net is pretty much anything less operations or cost or whatever it may be. Internal rate of return, present value, or payback period. These are economic ways of deciding a project, as it were. Now, so we've talked about the pre-project. Now, let's now go straight into the project start itself, the project charter. The project charter is initially started by the project sponsor, and more so the project manager is usually appointed early on at the beginning of the process, so they're part of the process. In some cases, the actual project manager could complete the project charter and simply hand it over back to the sponsor to sign off and authorize the project to move ahead. Okay, we got that right? Good. Now, it's a document, just like you have a resume. It's all right to say, before I look for a job, I'm going to write a resume. The question is, where do you start? What is in the resume? Personal profile, work experience, education, interests, what else is in there? Your certificates, vocational education you might have done, summary of what you know, your expertise and everything. It's easy to say I want to create a resume, and you and I know sometimes it's difficult to do that you have to employ the services of experts to do that. So also is a project charter. The project charter is a document. Look at it as a blank document, and you now have to think, my goodness, where do I start from? What do I do? Even the project sponsor could have the same problems. Just think, okay, we have an idea of what we want to do, but to actually put this document together to make sense and sign up a contract could be an issue. So you got to have a decent amount of knowledge in being able to create a project charter, and also to be able to know the things that need to go in there. In my opinion, even though the project integration management only has to develop a project charter and stakeholder, you actually go through the entire knowledge area completely in developing a project charter. You go through all of that, albeit at a very high level. That's very key to understanding what a project charter is. It contains at a very, very high level pretty much anything you can think about in the knowledge area. That said, now let's go through that list very quickly. A The project charter would always contain an executive summary of exactly what the project is about, what the business, what the organizational strategy is, and why the project was initiated. And that information will be got from where? The business case. Okay? It will contain at a very high level what this is about, what we're trying to achieve, what possible investments or we're trying to put in, and in return what we're going to get, when we're going to get it, and how quickly we're going to get it. So you can get that information from an input, which is the business case, right? Good. The next thing is we look at let's look at it from the knowledge area point of view, the scope. Overview, high level scope of what the project is going to cover and what is not going to be covered in the project. Okay, we look at the timelines. It's going to contain very high level summary milestone of how or what constraint in terms of time this project needs to be delivered. Okay, we go on to quality. Quality will define the acceptance criteria. What are the stakeholder requirements in order for you to be able to say this project is successful? What are you willing to accept to be able to define that the project is successful? Let's go down to the next. Cost. We talked about cost. We talked about cost. Yeah, I don't think I dealt with that. Cost would be pretty much, we have allocated £1 million. So you have high level budget. Not a breakdown of the cost, but high level that this amount of money has been allocated to this project. Right? It would definitely contain information about the project manager, that project manager A has been assigned, that is where your authority comes from, to do this project. Right? So we talked about scope, we talked about cost, we talked about quality. Right? Now, we want to talk about human resource management. Human resource management, it may contain, to an extent, resources that have been pre-assigned to work with the project manager. It may contain that at a very high level, not necessarily, but that is a very high possibility to say that the project manager will be working with the service delivery team and the head of finance or the finance controller to work on this project. So a mini mention of the project team will start or could start with the project charter. So we've talked about cost, we've talked about scope, we talked about human resources, we talked about quality, we've talked about time. Okay, we talked about procurement. We haven't talked about procurement. Again, could we mention that an external party will be involved, or in order to run this project, we'll need to go through a tender. Okay, so it talks a little bit about procurement at a very high level. So if you go through the knowledge areas or the thought processes or the things you should be thinking about in any delivery of any project, you find that the project charter contains all of that. It contains high-level risks as well. High-level risks are things that could potentially affect the project positively or negatively. In risk, you have threats and opportunities. And those are things that the project sponsor may or may not highlight at the mention, but the project manager and the project team will sit down, initial project team, not such because there's not one really, to actually look at this and help to develop the charter in order to be able to authorize the project to move forward. So when you think of a project charter, think of it as a document that contains a lot of high-level stuff that would ultimately be further developed in the planning process where you have the project management plan. Hence, one of the biggest inputs to developing a project management plan, or most important input, is the project charter itself. Okay? Statement of, so that is what it is. It's effectively a project charter. I like the way Richard's book actually talks a great deal about the project charter, and I would recommend, if you do use Richard's book, to actually go there and have a look at the examples of the topics that are in a project charter. Look, let me tell you something. The exam is not going to ask you what do you do in the integration phase of of initiation in develop a project charter. They're not going to ask you that kind of question. That's too easy. A 2-year-old could answer that question. They're going to ask you what kind of information can you find in a project charter. Just simply things like the title descriptions, a project title and a description, the project manager as the assigned authority, brief outline of the business case, brief outline of the resources assigned, brief outline of the stakeholder, an initial list of the stakeholders that you need to think about. It's going to contain assumptions, which is where your risk usually start from. It's going to contain constraints, which you need to work against, or the boundaries in which the project should work. It's going to contain the measuring project objectives, which again is the acceptance criteria or the quality criteria in which the project will be measured by. It's going to mention project approval requirements. Who is required to sign off this project in order for it to be able to kick off, and who's required to also sign off the closure as well. Again, this is part of your stakeholder mentioning. It's going to contain high-level project risks, and finally, the project sponsor authorizing the project. So it's very important for you to know the headlines that are in a project charter for you to appreciate the importance of the project charter and the purpose of the project charter itself. So, that all said, should it be easy? Should it be difficult for you to understand what you need to develop a project charter? No, it shouldn't be. You need the business case, which contains a lot about everything you need to know, how the whole pre-project was started in the first place and how it got bad. You need a statement of works. Statement of works is relative, really. It can be internal, it can be external. It's very common when you have an external party involved in the project. And it's pretty much almost like another business case. It just basically outlines exactly what the project is trying to achieve, or what the business is trying to achieve, and what needs to be done, and the terms and conditions of what needs to that needs to be met in order for the project or the supplier to deliver to meet those objectives. That there is really not a great deal to the project charter itself. You have the enterprise environmental factors, which are external factors that the project manager has absolutely no control of. Governance standards, political situations, organizational structure and culture are things that can potentially affect the development of a project charter. I also have the organizational process assets, which are literally documents and policies that could help in developing a project charter. Historical information. You could go into a similar project in the past and look at the lessons learned. You could go into a similar project in the past and even look at the project charter and see the format in which it was done. You could go to the project management office and ask them for a template for a project charter. The project sponsor should technically have started that initially, and you take that on and you finish it off and you send it back. But hey, yeah, right, you'll be lucky if you don't develop a project charter yourself. And in such a case, you just basically look for any type of information that is possible that could help you in guiding, in getting that particular project charter completed properly. And tools and technique, facilitation technique, expert judgment. Expert judgment is the easiest one. Expert judgment is basically seeking help, seeking advice from those who have done it before, from the PMO office, from fellow project managers, from stakeholders, from senior managers to CEOs, heads of IT, team leads, or anybody to say, look, I'm trying to develop a project and have you done one before? Can you guide me? Or what do you think? Where can I get the business case from? And anything that can help you to actually to actually put information together that you need to analyze moving forward, and then put down the project charter. Then put in the project charter. You have the facilitation technique. Now, they've used the word facilitation. It means that you simply organize, right? Facilitation is basically, you have a group of people and you facilitate their thought process, you facilitate the things they do. It could be a brainstorming session, it could be you could have a meeting, it could be a peer review, it could be just anything that involves a group of people that will help them and guide them to actually go through a series of steps in deciding what needs to be in the project charter for that will be presented to the sponsor for signing finally. And yeah, so I hope I've covered what it is about the project charter. I don't think there's anything else for you to worry about or to talk about. But hey, do make sure you use all the resources, read the books that you have, and understand what the project charter is. In summary, the project charter is developed at the very onset of the project. Is developed at the project under the project integration management within the initiating process group. Is developed to give authority to the project manager to actually commit resources and utilities and do any work whatsoever. Note, the project charter is not a contract itself. It's just basically the start. It's, in Prince 2 terms, I think you call it a project mandate. Basically, it mandates the project manager to do work and to start working on the project itself. And yeah, so that's what a project charter is. This ends part 1 of this particular video, and the part 2 we talk about identifying the stakeholder themselves, which is under the stakeholder management knowledge area, and basically take it from there. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do like it, please like it, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, please do, and so that whenever I raise and I load any further videos, you will automatically be notified. Have a great day. Take care.